What ho chaps, I'm MagicalMike and this is the Elementalist, an Altmer magic based build using the Ordinator perk overhaul. This character happens to have picked up a wedding dress as her robes of choice, but any clothing of your choosing will do for that classic caster feel as you roam the land as the most feared and powerful destruction mage that Skyrim has ever seen. You won't be alone though, because the Elementalist is also a master of conjuration and can call forth multiple Atronachs from the plains of oblivion on a whim, supplementing her already vast array of destruction spells. The Elementalist is quite the glass cannon though, relying entirely on alteration for protection whilst being defended by her Atronachs. The trees you'll be investing your perks into are primarily destruction for damage, conjuration for additional allies, and alteration for defense and support. To a lesser extent, you'll be looking at a few restoration and enchanting perks to supplement the build, and finally a few key speech perks to power up your shouts. Alchemy perks are also an option to build a huge stash of gold more quickly, but not totally necessary. For stat distribution, focus almost entirely on increasing your magicka and avoiding damage in the first place, but if you feel like you get instantly killed too often by dragons perhaps, then take a few levels in health here and there. Overall, it won't make too much difference, but you'll be getting a lot of additional health and resistances through enchantments and alteration as you progress and level up. This character is going to spend all of her time throwing destruction spells at enemies from a distance, summoning Atronachs to distract them, which reduces incoming attacks, whilst also tossing further damage towards those bad guys. The playstyle is really quite simple, just stay mobile, pick the right elemental spells for the job, and keep casting, which means fire spells for overall damage, frost spells to help with melee crowd control by slowing people and draining their stamina, and shock spells to counter other mages. Into the details now, with perks I'd suggest taking to build the character. Do remember that we are using the Ordinator mod and my version may be different to yours, so adapt and improvise if you see anything different. These are pretty much just suggestions. Destruction being your primary perk tree is going to dominate the majority of your levels. Taking both points of mastery is a must to increase your damage, along with a variety of the early choices to the elemental specifics. Ionized Path, Merciless Cold and Combustion being hugely valuable early choices. You'll probably want to focus on one damage type early on, moving to a wider variety in the mid-levels, and then focusing on one element to max out first. You're pretty free to take just about everything in the whole tree, with various crowd control effects, area control effects, and explosive effects making appearances throughout, such as electroconvulsions causing incapacitation. Perks to avoid are the rune ones because you simply won't be using them, and elemental specializations because you want access to the full power of every element. For conjuration, you'll be going all up the left hand side and focusing only on Atronachs, being able to summon them further away for longer, healing them when they're close to you, gaining increased destruction spell damage through the Pact Magic perk, giving them more attack damage when you're charging a huge spell, which is quite often with the Apocalypse Spells mod, and being able to have 3 or 4 Atronachs fighting with you at all times. Choosing the right one for the job is also important. Storm and Flame Atronachs are great for ranged support, while Frost Atronachs can tank for you. Just make sure that you're throwing the same elemental spells out too, so that you don't kill your own summons. For alteration, you'll find a number of perks that help you survive and augment your spells. Mage Armor, of course, will give you some base defense, as long as you're wearing robes. Geomancer will reduce damage taken while holding a spell charge. Alter Self Resistances should give you additional shock and fire resist. Alter Self Attributes will give you an additional 50 health or magicka. Energy Shield will use your magicka as an extra health pool, and Intuitive Magic will allow you to cast lower level spells for free. Wellock's Dormant Arcana will give you extra regeneration, and Wild Shrines will add 5 shrines to the world that when found will buff all of your magic schools even further. Those are all of your major perks, so here's some further ideas. In Restoration, Descending Light will rapidly regen magicka at the start of a fight, allowing you to throw out all of your Atronachs quickly. Edgewalker will make your emergency heals more effective, and Respite will let you heal your stamina, which is particularly useful if you're a vampire in the sunlight. If you want to pursue enchanting for yourself, then working towards the Miracle perk will let you craft an insanely powerful piece of gear, which I suggest using on a necklace or your robes. However, I don't find the grind to 100 much fun, so I'd also suggest using the Honed Metal mod, which lets you pay enchanter NPCs to do things for you. but they'll never be able to make anything as strong as you could make with the Miracle perk. Finally, as with many builds, I'll also suggest a small investment into the Speech Tree. Having the Salesman perk can make selling loot infinitely simpler and enable selling to some trainers too, which can help a massive amount with training destruction by forcing Feralda to buy all of your loot. Hurricane Force can also make your shouts a lot stronger, which I find fun, so I normally include it too. And perhaps you might want to invest into alchemy as well. The stronger your potions, the more they're worth, and alchemy is always my main method of making gold when I play Skyrim. Enchant an extra set of gear with alchemy effectiveness, and you'll be rolling in gold in no time. And after all of that, there's still some other details to talk about. My standing stones are just vanilla, so the Mage is an obvious choice for leveling, but the Apprentice or the Atronach are also good choices. I usually forget to swap away from my leveling one though, so expect to see a lot of those basic 3, Warrior, Thief and Mage, and the Lover get mentioned a lot in these builds. For shouts, I tend to keep it simple on this build too, sticking to Fire or Frost Breath for even more damage, and they do well with the Hurricane Force perk too. Enchantments should focus as much as possible on amplifying destruction spells. I'm using the Summer Mist mod, so things might be a bit different without it, but grabbing that, a whole load of Magicka regen stacking so you can spam high damage spells a bunch, and as much elemental resistances as you can find. Focusing on Shock Resist to counter enemy mages, and Fire Resist to counter the most common damage type, and in case you're a vampire, to counter the negatives you'll be suffering from that too. This is also your chance to bolster your total health and magicka if you feel like it's lacking. Alternatively, add some reduced cost of spells in there too if you're having trouble with magicka reserves. As for spells, anything and everything in destruction magic, apart from runes. Apocalypse spells are a ton of fun to use, and any excuse to cast a flame strike or a tornado is absolutely welcome. Just pick your favourite damage spell and just start blasting. Make sure that you keep your Atronach spells up to date for conjuration, your flesh spells up to date for alteration, and your heal nice and solid for restoration. The Elementalist is very much a one-trick pony. Fire as much destruction at the enemy before they kill you. There's not much more to it. Though, Akato's Recital is an incredible spell to pick up as early as you can. Attune your best flesh spell to it, maybe Muffle for free illusion levels, and an elemental cloak for some more damage, or perhaps tree rings from the restoration school for a massive stack of temporary health whenever you enter combat. As for some suggested goals for the Elementalist, obviously the College of Winterhold questline is a must. There's no one else more suitable, or at least more terrifying, to be in charge of the Mages Guild in all of Skyrim. Most of the Daedric quests are good choices to get involved in. I imagine that someone wielding this much power wouldn't pass up the opportunity to get their hands on even more powerful artifacts, and hey, if you've got them, then nobody else can misuse them, right? Unless that's what you wanted to do, and who am I to stop you? Personally, I really felt like this character suited being a vampire lord too, so the Dawnguard DLC was a good time, and allying with Harkon was a choice. I felt quite at home in the Soul Cairn as well, which was quite strange since I hardly ever go there. Being a vampire does mean that your regen will be stunted in the sunlight, but with enchanted gear and the Respite perk, you won't even feel the effects of it. And finally, the Dragonborn DLC is another good choice to aim for. Mirak needs to be put in his place after all, and those black books house a lot of forbidden knowledge that could be put to good use for this mage. Do note that you'll be very weak in the early game, relying on companions to carry you through things until you can get some better spells, enchanted gear, and a magicka pool big enough to support yourself. But as soon as you can, get rid of your allies, because it turns out that they don't really like being hit with fireballs. With enough alchemy, you'll be rolling in gold early on, and you'll need it because gear, spells, and destruction training are all very expensive for this build. And by the way, you'll want to train destruction as often as possible because it is the slowest leveling skill in the game. Conjuration can be trained fairly quickly by trapping souls, and alteration will passively increase via the Akato's Recital spell, which is fantastic. You might also consider doing some restoration training too, if you feel that skill's lagging behind. So that's the Elementalist, a magnificent magician, a sensational sorcerer, a wicked wizard, a superb spellslinger, and a cool conjurer. Go ahead, get out there and get casting. This build was tons of fun to play and was in fact the first one I made when Special Edition came out. I did everything with it and found it to be outstanding in its ability to get the jobs done and adapt. while also still feeling weak at some points, just to ground the experience and remind me that she was, after all, still a squishy wizard wearing a wedding dress. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.